Hello everyone and welcome to another horrific review. Today we're discussing Weapons, directed by Cregger. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night, at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Hello all, just managed to check this one out and I have to say I was impressed. So of course Cregger of Barbarian's fame and is set to direct the next Resident Evil sort of reboot. So of course we're looking at this to see how well it's going to go and is it worth checking out in future. As it's just come out, I'm going to avoid spoilers. I'll go over the sort of storytelling narratives, what it's about and sort of how I thought it turned out. So as the trailer says, we have a teacher arriving in the classroom one morning and basically the entire class has vanished except for one boy. And the whole movie is dealing with the fallout of that and then trying to solve the mystery. Wee bit of an interesting narration tool is that the story is split up into a couple of acts coming from each of the main characters' perspective. Very similar to Boogie Pop Phantom, if you saw that review with Flea and myself, but a lot less confusing. At least this, we're getting a payoff. Each act goes from a character. So first of all, Justine, the teacher, who's in charge of the class where the incident took place. Start off with her and see that she's an alcoholic, she's a slightly unhinged individual, and she also doesn't understand boundaries. I just got in trouble before, so she's basically on her last legs as a teacher, and in the profession she is busy hanging on by the thinnest of threads. I don't think it's deliberately misdirecting. What the story's basically showing is this is a trashy town. This is an American trashy town with trashy people, and it's just that sort of veneer. They've got enough money. It's a strange thing in America that trashy people can have money, but they do. So these are the sort of reasonably well-off trashy people, if that makes sense, but it's still the same. So everyone there, in the law enforcement, they're the teachers, and that, they're not great individuals. So we've got the fallout of this, the fact at 2:17 in the morning, 17 kids basically just vanish, and that's it. There's ring cameras, there's CCTV that just sees them, disappear off in the night, and nobody has a clue what became of them or what it was about. And obviously the biggest mystery is the fact that Alex is still there. And once again, it's a slight misdirect. Is he the cause of it? Is he not? Is Justine the cause of it? This is the whole thing that plays out. Now, I thought with this being 2 hours long, that it'd be a bit of a slog to get through, because the danger these stories make is they keep you strung along and then everything's wrapped up in the last 5 minutes. This is actually pretty decent for pacing, and we find out early enough in the movie what the cause and where it's going, and then it's basically the resolution and how that's going to work out. An interesting thing as well, we have a child narrator talking of the incident in past tense, so basically from the future recalling the tale. We don't know who the child narrator is. I don't think they're characters seen throughout the movie, and honestly, more than a storytelling device, they're not relevant. I think it's just more of a tool to relay things to the audience of what happened. So straight away you know that this is going to get resolved in one way or another, because it's part of the town's history now, the incident. And once again, this is one that can fall into the trap, a bit like Long Legs, where you get an ambiguous ending and you don't know what's happening. This could have fallen into that trap, but it doesn't. And I think if you've watched Barbarian in particular, Cregger's good at this. He's good at misdirects, but he doesn't rely on them to tell the whole story or to carry the movie. They're just a tool of the trade. So the misdirects sort of get resolved early enough that you can actually just enjoy the movie and then see how it plays out. And I appreciate that. I hate the movies that just keep you stringing along and guessing, and there's almost an arrogance about them, isn't there? That they're like, you're not smart enough to figure it out. Ha ha. This isn't doing that. This is treating the audience with respect. It's basically going, yeah, I'm going to give you a bit of a mystery, but I'm not going to play with you too much. I'm just going to make your time worthwhile. And it's interesting because we see Justine, we see effectively she's an alcoholic, we see her spiral out of control. We also see the fact that the town is looking for a scapegoat and she's effectively it. And that's essentially what's going on here. She's getting hounded by the village. She can't move because she's already been sacked from a previous school for crossing boundaries. Nothing inappropriate, but she just doesn't know when to draw that line, which is, especially today, is paramount. Nobody wants to work with kids these days because it's just too much of a minefield. It's difficult, and we understand why these things have happened because of things in the past, but at the same time, you can have overcorrections, you can have where it's doing damage. I think we're seeing that too. There's a chasm is built up between adults and children, and it kind of shows with Justine's character, who seems to be, although flawed, a genuinely caring person and is doing the job for that reason, but should have been a great teacher 30 years previously, if that makes sense. We'll see her meeting up with Paul, who's another main character, one of the police officers, and then there's this whole thing with Paul's girlfriend because he sleeps with her, and you don't really know what's going on, but the fact is she's effectively stalking Alex, the only kid that's left, and she's drinking like while on a stakeout, like she's pouring booze into a cup. Like, this woman's a mess. Each segment comes to a conclusion, but I don't want to talk about that for spoilers reasons, but we get an idea of what's happening here. So her little segment finishes, then we go on to Archer. Archer is the father of one of the missing children, and this guy is broken. His son Matthew went missing. He's essentially a stranger in his own house. He's sleeping in his son's bed at night. His wife and have become estranged, essentially. He's at work and he can't do the job. He's messing up. He's a builder by trade and owns a building company, and he's getting all the orders wrong. Everything's just an absolute mess. He fixates on Justine, and what they do here is to cross the stories over. So when the next story happens, it goes back a bit in time, and we see the bits where it crosses over. Like I said, very much like Boogie Pop Phantom, where the same incident happens and we get the characters that come into the incidents from a different perspectives. The difference, like I said here, is it does tie together narratively and it works. He's done a bit of like personal investigating and he can't let it go because it doesn't make sense, and that's one thing that the movie does really well. It gives you a sense of just complete shock and people being perplexed. Very much, if you know the song Falling Away From Me by Korn, you know, with all the kids sort of do that, it's very much like that. There's another agency, or they're like being controlled or called or something. An interesting thing as well is both Archer and Justine are having dreams about the kids, so it's almost like there's signal being sent out or somebody trying to connect them. So we've got a bit of is it a sci-fi, is it a supernatural, is it something else thing going on here, pretty much like Longlegs, but it gets resolved. So if you've watched Longlegs and you see the way that starts off, but you get a very disappointing resolution at the end, this doesn't do that, so don't worry there. If somebody makes a comparison to Longlegs, it's not like that. Yes, that movie's enjoyable, it's quirky, it's its own thing, but you get the payoff here where you didn't then. Thing where Justine's car gets vandalised, and then we find out it was Archer did it, so the two connect together. And then Archer starts to make a connection. He just can't let it go, so he's getting the city planning maps out. He's trying to talk to the other parents. He's basically trying to find out what's happened. And then his section ends when he goes to confront Justine and something else happens. And then that segment closes. Once again, I'm trying to avoid bloody spoilers here. I should have watched the trailer again before I started this, so I could maybe say, right, that bit in the trailer happens, blah blah blah. But each segment closes down with an incident. Then we meet Paul. Paul's the police officer that Justine slept with, and then we go back to his story, and then it almost goes back in time up to the point where he meets Justine. We find out that he's also an alcoholic. He's going to meetings. He was in a relationship previously with Justine before he got with Deborah, and yeah, he's struggling. He's on the police force, and his father-in-law is the police chief. It's that sort of small town, small city type of affair happening. He encounters a junkie called James, and basically he stops him robbing somewhere. He gets him, arrests him, tackles him to the ground, and then when he asks him, is there anything that'll hurt me, you know, the usual rigmarole, he gets stuck with a needle, and then he just has a meltdown, and he just sparks this guy out. And yeah, there's a whole thing with them switching off cameras and stuff and hoping it goes away. And then this is the bit where at the end of his segment you see the text message from Justine, which then connects to the bit in the start. So it's very well done. The problem with these sort of narrative things is they can become like Boogie Pop Phantom and some ones, they can become twisted and they can get too convoluted. But this isn't doing that. It's actually telling the story very well and joining it all together. And it's just an interesting way to show different perspectives of the same incident and how everyone's dealing with the fallout. What I wasn't expecting was James, the junkie, basically to have a story arc in this, but he does. And his is actually the most important one, because his is the reveal. He's the one that sort of stumbles and solves the mystery. But because the incident with him and Paul's already happened, and yeah, that sort of messes it up. I'm trying not to spoil again. Sorry, apologies for this. But he is doing junky things, lives in town trying to get a hit going robbing, and yeah, basically he's trying to get the $50,000 reward because he finds out information, and then it just goes tits up. And his segment closes because, yeah, things happen. this is a review I might have to do again like in 6 months' time and go blah 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 blah, or maybe save it for the talk spot. At least it'll be out long enough by then. The fact that this is just out, I don't want to spoil it. We'll go to Marcus. Now, Marcus is the school principal. He is obviously tied to Justine. Justine is bending his ear about Alex because she's effectively stalking the wee boy. And he then has to go through certain motions because she makes a complaint and uses CPS. That's the That's the American social services. So he has to go through motions, and then that's where we meet another character. And I don't want to talk about that character. That character is actually quite important. But we see that he's essentially going about his business, and him and his husband are going shopping and stuff while Justine's bending his ear. Then the other character comes in, and his story arc closes going back to Justine and Archer. So already at this point, this is the point I'm trying to make about the movie, we know what's happened to a degree. Not 100%, but we have more or less at this stage of the movie, we know what's happened. Like I said, normally these type of movies that string you along right up to the end. This isn't. We've got the pieces in these first 3 acts, so we know what's happened. So then we go to final act from a character's perspective, because then it all comes together at the end. But we then go to Alex, and then we see Alex's story and how he's involved and why he's the only child that didn't go with the rest of the kids. I'm not going to talk about Alex's yeah, I've put notes here, but I'm not going to talk about Alex's story. He's just a normal kid, and yeah, there's a couple of school bullies, but generally he's actually quite happy and there's no issues. Then things happen and Alex gets involved in this. Alex's story is the one that brings it all together. Then we basically get all the blanks filled in. But before Alex's story, we basically know what's happened and what's responsible, which is cool because, like I said, I don't like it when these sort of movies just string you along and then try and ram it all together, conclude everything in the last act or the last 10 minutes of the movie, because it's really frustrating because the pacing of this, the movie, like The Conjuring's a really good example. It's so slow paced and it goes right on until like the last act, and then it all comes together like in a rush. I don't like that. This is at least giving you a chance to appreciate what's going on here and then go a little bit more into the incident with the children. And there's still a few questions because we don't know 100% what this is, but we have a good idea. After the conclusion of Alex's segment, then basically it comes together from third person perspective. The story continues and the characters that are left trying to solve the mystery, it plays out to its conclusion, and we understand then that things are not good, but we do get a great resolution. I mean, the intensity, it's worth the wait because the intensity in the final act really ramps up. It doesn't hold back, and we get some real poetic justice at the end of it. But we also find that it's not everybody lives happily ever after type thing. The damage is done and there's no sort of going back. And once again, back to the little girl pops in again to give the narration and close out the story of basically how things carried on afterwards and how this has become an incident in local lore, so to speak. One thing I will say is you'll never look at a can of soup the same way if you watch this. I never thought a can of soup could be like a horror storytelling device and be a sign of absolute desperation and grimness. But if you watch this, you'll understand what I mean. But there you go, really good movie. Enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. It's well worth the watch, hence avoiding the spoilers. The hype in this case is good. There's a lot of hype about this movie, people really enjoying it, and honestly, they're not wrong. It's well told. It's nice to see that. It's nice to see actually a good gripping horror that has you wondering, but doesn't string you along too long. And it doesn't rush everything, and it doesn't give you an ambiguous ending. It does play out. But we're still questions. It's one of them things. There's still questions at the end of it. I don't see there being a need for a sequel. I think this is just a standalone movie. We're not trying to do a franchise or anything. I think it would be a struggle to do it. A sequel doesn't just be, off. But there you go. There's that. If you watch this, let me know what you think. And until next time, keep up to date with the channel. Do the technical things. And remember to keep it creepy. Keep it horrific.